Yo, what's going on? Thank you for checking out today's video. Before we get into the video, if you haven't already, subscribe, drop a like, leave a comment.
You know, sound is just, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's the hum of the fridge, traffic outside, the music we choose to play. It's just constantly there.
It really is a total backdrop to life.
But how much do we actually know about what's going on beyond just hearing it? It feels so basic, but I suspect the details are pretty complex.
Oh, absolutely. We hear this incredibly rich world of sound without really thinking about it, but the physics and then how our brain pieces it all together.
Yeah.
It's quite intricate. What we perceive isn't even the raw vibration. It's our brain's interpretation.
Exactly. So that's what this deep dive is all about. We want to pull back that curtain on the real building blocks of sound, its characteristics.
Yeah, get into the physics of how it travels, how our ears grab it, how our brains make sense of it, what makes a sound like itself.
We've looked at some really fascinating sources that break all this down, and our mission today is to take these maybe seemingly abstract ideas and turn them into something clear, memorable, something that gives you a whole new appreciation for, everything you hear.
It's about understanding the journey, really, from the source vibrating right to that moment it clicks in your mind.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning then. Sound waves. What is sound? Fundamentally, our sources are clear on this. It all starts with vibration.
That's the absolute core. Think about anything making sound, a guitar string you pluck, a speaker moving, your own voice. As that thing vibrates, it physically pushes on the air molecules right next to it. When it pushes out, it squishes those molecules together. That creates a little pocket of higher air pressure.
Right.
And that momentary high pressure zone, that's compression.
Okay, so it's like a little pressure wave moving outwards, like nudging dominoes.
Sort of, yeah. And then the other half of the movement, as the vibrating object moves back in, it pulls away from those molecules.
Ah, creating space.
Exactly. It creates an area where the molecules are spread further apart so the pressure is lower. That's rarefaction.
Compression, rarefaction.
Got it. And sound just travels, propagates through these continuous alternating waves of higher and lower pressure. It's these tiny, super fast pressure changes hitting your eardrum that start the whole process of hearing.
Which explains why sound needs something to travel through, right? A medium.
Precisely. No air, no molecules to push around, no sound. Like in space, all those movie explosions, totally silent, realistically.
Good point. Okay, so that's the movement. But what about the strength of the sound? What we perceive as loudness?
That's amplitude, yeah.
Amplitude, exactly. It's the measure of the sound wave's strength or intensity. Think of it like the height of a water wave.
Bigger wave, more energy?
Yeah, pretty much. A sound wave with greater amplitude means the air molecules are being pushed and pulled more forcefully, displaced further from their resting position, and that translates directly to what we perceive as a louder sound.
And how do we measure that? I saw peak amplitude mentioned.
Right, peak amplitude is one way. It's simply the maximum pressure reached, the highest point of the wave. Like the very crest, it tells you the loudest single instant. But there's also RMS, root mean square. That sounds a bit more involved. Is it like more useful?
It often is, yeah.
Yeah.
RMS, or root mean square, gives you a better picture of the effective loudness over time, not just the absolute peak moment.
Right.
Think of it like this. Peak is the highest splash a wave makes, but RMS is more like the average height or the overall power hitting the beach. It approximates our perception of loudness better. For a simple sine wave, it's about 70%, well, 0.707 times the peak.
Don't need the exact math, but I get the idea. RMS is closer to what we actually hear as sustained loudness.
Exactly. That's why it's super important for things like audio mastering or setting levels for streaming. You want consistent perceived loudness for the listener, not just avoiding one tiny peak clipping. It's about the overall energy.
Makes sense. Practical loudness. And talking about perception, our ears, they have this huge range, don't they? From incredibly quiet sounds to sounds that actually hurt.
The range is phenomenal. Our sources talk about the threshold of hearing, the quietest sound we can detect, and the threshold of pain, where sound becomes physically damaging.
And the quiet end, the threshold of hearing, isn't the same for all sounds.
No, definitely not. Our sensitivity varies a lot with frequency, with the pitch of the sound. We're actually incredibly sensitive to some ranges. The quietest sound we can pick up under ideal conditions might be around 10 micropascals of pressure.
Which is tiny.
Ridiculously tiny. Think like the air pressure change from a mosquito flapping its wings a few meters away. Our sources mention it can be as low as -6 dB SPL, especially listening with one ear from the front.
Yeah.
It's astonishing sensitivity.
Wow. So we're better at hearing certain pitches when things are really quiet.
Exactly. Our sweet spot is generally in the mid-range frequencies, maybe 1 kilohertz to 4 kilohertz, which maybe not coincidentally is right where a lot of human speech information sits.
Evolution at work.
Could be. And here's another cool thing. Listening with both ears, binaural listening, actually makes us even more sensitive by about 3 to 6 dB. It's like our brain combines the signals and gets a boost.
Built-in gain.
Kind of, yeah. And it also helps us filter out noise. This variation in sensitivity is also part of why we use decibels, the dB scale. It's logarithmic, which matches how our hearing perceives changes in loudness.
Meaning a jump in dB doesn't mean an equal jump in pressure.
Right. Going from, say, 60 dB like a normal chat to 90 dB like a lawnmower. It might feel maybe twice as loud subjectively, but the actual physical sound pressure has increased like 1,000 times. Our hearing compresses that huge physical range into something manageable. It's really amazing biology.
It really is. Changes how you think about just listening. Okay, so we've covered loudness, amplitude. What about how high or low a sound is? That's frequency, relating to pitch.
Spot on. Frequency is simply how many times a sound wave completes a full cycle, 1 compression and 1 rarefaction per second. We measure this in Hertz. 1 Hertz is 1 cycle per second.
So more cycles per second, higher pitch.
Exactly. Higher frequency equals higher perceived pitch. Lower frequency, fewer cycles per second, means a lower pitch. For humans, the typical hearing range is roughly 20 Hertz, which is a super low rumble, up to about 20,000 Hertz, or 20 kilohertz, which is a very high hiss or squeak.
Though that top end tends to drop off as we get older.
It does, yeah. But what's also interesting, and something our sources pointed out, is that our perception of pitch isn't always perfectly accurate, especially when things get loud.
Oh, how so? That sounds weird.
It is a bit weird. Apparently, at really high volumes, say over 95 dB, think loud concerts, power tools, our brain starts to interpret low bass sounds as being slightly flatter in pitch than they actually are.
Lower than they should be.
Yeah. And conversely, high treble sounds can be perceived as slightly sharper or higher pitched than they are.
Whoa. Why does that happen?
It seems to be related to how the inner ear mechanisms, including tiny muscles that try to protect us from loud sounds, react under stress. They don't respond quite evenly across the frequency spectrum at those high-intensity levels.
So if you're mixing music really loud, or just blasting your headphones, you're literally not hearing the pitches correctly. That's kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. And it's a huge reason why audio professionals stress listening at moderate levels and why taking breaks is so important if you are in a loud environment. Your ears get fatigued and your perception gets skewed. You can't make accurate judgments or even fully appreciate the music if your hearing isn't working right. Protect your ears.
Absolutely. That's a crucial takeaway. Okay, so loudness, amplitude, pitch, frequency. But sounds have more to them than that, right? Like, why does a violin playing a C note sound totally different from a trumpet playing the exact same C note?
Yeah.
And that's about its character, its timbre.
Exactly, timbre. This is where sound gets its unique personality, its color. It's not just about that one main frequency, the fundamental, which gives us the basic sense of pitch.
Right.
A sound's character comes from its spectral envelope. Think of it as its complete sonic recipe. It includes that fundamental frequency, sure, but also a whole complex mix of other, usually quieter frequencies happening at the same time. We call these partials, and they include things like subtones, overtones, harmonics.
So it's not just one clean wave, it's like a whole stack of related waves all added together.
Precisely. The fundamental is the loudest, usually defining the note we hear. But all those other partials, their specific frequencies and how loud they are relative to the fundamental, and how they change over the duration of the sound, that's what creates the unique timbre. It's the difference between a violin and trumpet, or even between two different violins.
That's amazing. It's the complexity that gives it richness.
Absolutely. And understanding this spectral content, mapping out these partials and their levels, tells you so much about the sound's character.
And this relates to something called pitch density. How does that fit in?
Yeah, pitch density is more about how different timbres and frequency ranges are balanced within a whole piece of music or a mix. If you have, say, the bass guitar, the kick drum, and a low synth all pumping out energy in the same low-frequency region, that area will sound very dense or maybe even muddy.
Too much stuff in one place.
Right. Good mixing often involves managing this pitch density, carving out space in the frequency spectrum for each instrument or sound so its unique timbre can be heard clearly. He spread the energy across the lows, mids, and highs. He contributes to the overall clarity and timbral balance.
Giving everything its own little sonic spot. Which actually leads us perfectly into the next big area, how we perceive sound in space, where it's coming from, the spatial characteristics.
Yes, this is all about our impression of where a sound source is physically located and also how the environment itself shapes the sound's timbre before it reaches us.
So not just the sound itself, but its context.
Exactly. In any real acoustic space, a room, a hall, outdoors, we perceive sound in 3 dimensions, right?
Right.
There's distance, how far away is it? There's the horizontal plane, is it left, right, center? And the vertical plane, is it above or below us?
And our ears somehow figure all that out incredibly quickly. I know timing differences between the ears matter, like if a sound hits one ear slightly before the other.
That's definitely a key part, especially for telling left from right, the inner time difference, and loudness differences too, interaural level difference. But our sources highlight something else that's critical, especially for figuring out front-back or up-down. Interaural spectral differences.
Spectral differences, so differences in the frequencies hitting each ear.
Precisely. Subtle but crucial differences in the frequency content, the timbre, that reaches each ear. These spectral cues become really important where time and level differences might be ambiguous, like for sounds directly in front or behind or above or below.
And does the physical shape of our outer ear play into that? The pinna looks pretty complicated.
It's not just for decoration. The pinna, that whole outer ear structure, is incredibly important. It acts like a collector, gathering sound and funneling it into the ear canal. But its complex ridges and folds do something else amazing.
What's that?
They act as filters. As sound waves bounce off those curves before entering the ear canal, certain frequencies get slightly boosted or cut, depending on the angle the sound arrived from.
Ah, so the sound changes slightly depending on direction.
Exactly. Your brain learns to interpret these subtle, direction-dependent frequency changes, these unique spectral fingerprints provided by each pinna. By comparing the slightly different filtered sounds arriving at both ears, it can pinpoint the sound's origin much more precisely, especially in that tricky vertical dimension or telling front from back. It's like built-in acoustic processing.
That is genuinely incredible. Our ears are doing constant spectral analysis. But okay, it's not just the direct sound from the source that tells us about space, right? The echoes, the reflections must be huge.
Absolutely huge. How we perceive the environment itself, the size of the room, whether it's echoey or dead, relies heavily on the relationship between the direct sound, the sound straight from the source, and the reflected sound, all the echoes bouncing off surfaces.
Like in a big church versus a small padded room. Totally different feeling.
Totally different. And our brains use several cues from those reflections, according to our sources. First, there's the time difference between when the direct sound hits your ear and when the very first reflection arrives.
That initial gap, sometimes called pre-delay in effects, right?
Exactly, pre-delay. Then there's the spacing in time of the subsequent early reflections. Are they arriving close together or spread out? Also, the amplitude differences. How loud are the reflections compared to the direct sound, and how quickly do they die away?
They probably sound different too.
They do. That's the fourth key factor, timbre differences. As sound bounces off surfaces, especially softer ones, it tends to lose high-frequency energy. So reflections often sound warmer or duller than the direct sound. Our brain processes all these cues, time gaps, spacing, loudness decay, timbre changes, to build a mental model of the space we're in.
And sometimes those reflections get so dense, so numerous, they all kind of merge together. That's diffused sound.
Right. When you have countless reflections bouncing around from all directions, like in a large reverberant hall, the sound becomes diffused. It loses clear directional cues. It just seems to surround you. That dense, lingering sound is what we typically call reverberation.
And all of this direct sound, reflections, diffusion contributes to what mixers and producers call the sound stage.
Precisely. The perceived sound stage is that sense of space you get when listening to well-produced music or even a live performance. It's the illusion that different instruments or voices are located in specific positions within a three-dimensional space.
Yeah, like you can hear the drummer in the center, maybe slightly back, the lead guitar panned left, backing vocals spread wide.
Exactly. Engineers use panning, reverb, delay, manipulating these very characteristics we've discussed to create that spatial image. They can play sounds high, low, near, far, making the listening experience much more immersive and realistic. It's all about skillfully controlling these fundamental wave properties to build sonic worlds.
Wow, what a journey. So we started with the absolute basics. Sound as just a physical vibration, pushing air into compressions and rarefactions, needing something to travel through.
Then we looked at strength, amplitude, and how that relates to loudness, digging into peak versus RMS, and just how incredibly sensitive our hearing is.
Yeah.
With that logarithmic decibel scale managing a huge dynamic range.
Right, from that threshold of hearing all the way to pain, and then frequency, determining pitch, but also how our pitch perception itself can get a bit wonky at really loud volumes, a really important point.
And from there, the real character timbre arising from that complex spectral envelope, the fundamental, plus all those harmonics and overtones that make a sound unique.
And finally, how we perceive space. How our two ears, using tiny differences in timing, loudness, and especially those subtle spectral shifts caused by our pinas, work with the direct sound and reflections.
The pre-delay, the decay, the timbre changes.
To build this incredible 3D soundstage in our minds, telling us where things are and what kind of environment we're in.
It really does change how you listen, doesn't it? Suddenly you start noticing these details.
Totally. And understanding these characteristics, it's not just academic, is it? It genuinely deepens your appreciation for music production, for acoustics, even just for how you experience the world day to day. You start hearing how sounds are constructed.
It makes listening a much more active, engaged process. You're aware of the physics and the perception happening behind the scenes.
So here's a thought to leave you with. If sound, as we perceive it, is essentially our brain's interpretation of these physical vibrations and pressure changes, if it's a constructed reality based on these wave characteristics, what kind of new realities, what new sonic experiences could we create if we truly mastered manipulating these fundamentals?
What becomes possible when you can sculpt sound at that foundational level?
Something to think about next time you really listen.